Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Racism. If this is your first time checking this out, thank you so much and welcome. And if you've seen some of the other episodes, well, thank you and welcome back. We've had conversations with multiple people discussing racism for multiple points of view, and today we're going to continue that conversation. I'm very fortunate to be joined by my friend Maissa Houri. She is an award-winning filmmaker. She is a mom. She is a wife. She is an amazing person. And she's also somebody who's had many encounters with racism, some of which we will discuss today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever met somebody, and even though you've known them for a short period of time, you feel like you've known them for ages? That is exactly how I feel about my next guest. I have known Maissa Houri for several years, although it feels like a lifetime, not because it's been a lifetime of agony, but because it's just there's so many commonalities and there's so many great memories that have been that we've seen over this time. What doesn't she do? On top of a full-time job, she is also a wife. She is a mom. She's an award-winning filmmaker. She likes to act. She likes to write. I don't. Do you make cupcakes as well, by the way?
Not as good as my sister, but yeah.
She pretty much does everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Maissa Houri. Maissa, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Do you remember when we met at that, like after the movie at the bar, and then like I got shoved by like a bunch of people?
I do. They shoved you into my direction. It's like they were pushing this friendship to happen. It was all fate. I love it. I'll have to send them a drink sometime. Before we get into the main topic today, first and foremost, how is the family dealing with everything during this whole pandemic? Because I know you guys have, like the rest of us, been on lockdown for the last few months, and of course you've got
Yeah.
two adorable small girls in the house. How's that been going?
Um, we have our ups and downs. School finally finished, so like thank God. But it's had its challenges. But some things are really good, and some things, like everybody, we have our challenges. But we're healthy, and we have our jobs. We can't complain. Like I really can't.
Excellent. Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Um, of course, this conversation that I've been having with multiple people really sparked with the George Floyd incident several weeks ago, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But you and I have had multiple conversations about race over the years, and
Yeah.
talked about different experiences in that. And when I decided to do this series, you were one of the first people that I reached out to that I wanted to have a conversation with. So I'm glad that we're having this
Hmm.
opportunity. I guess I'll go back to the George Floyd incident. I know I've talked to multiple people about this, but I want to get your perspective on it. So when this terrible incident happened, and the footage came out, and we saw what
Yeah.
happened with the police officer holding him down, him screaming out for his mother. I'm sure that touched some nerves for
Hmm.
you being a mother yourself. Um, tell me about your headspace as we were all going through seeing this incident.
I had only watched part of the footage because I couldn't. I was just like, well, like, what am I watching? Like, I couldn't continue to watch it. It was terrible. And then I'd seen photos and like the different angles and so, and like, my heart was just, I couldn't fathom how we were all like, like everyone was watching this footage.
Hmm.
Uh, Everyone's watching this man die in front of their eyes, and like the way he was treated, the way he was, and for nothing, something so ridiculous, and it just, all these things kind of kept going through my mind, like where is the de-escalation, where, and then, you go back to like the different people who've been killed by police, or people who are acting on police, like it's the citizen's arrest or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and you think back, like where is the de-escalation? It automatically jumps to shooting the person, or really really more like killing them by choke,
Hmm.
or whatnot. And it's really makes me sad,
Yeah.
and it's just don't there's no reason for that, and it's that's where my mind went, was just like what's happening, like what's happening with our world, where you go from 0 to 100 for nothing,
Hmm.
and for people who are supposed to protect you,
Yeah.
so how are we supposed to feel safe?
No, that's an absolutely valid question. And I think since then, we're seeing this huge public outcry. We've been
Yeah,
seeing the protesting, the peaceful protesting globally. And
yeah.
this is something unlike I've ever seen because we both know that this isn't the first time there's been a involved killing. This isn't new.
No.
But what is new is the reaction that
Yeah.
people of all ethnicities are up in
Hmm.
arms. You're seeing a lot of companies making statements, coming out in support of Black Lives Matter. People who might not have been in a position to appreciate the level
Hmm.
of racism that exists are now putting their hands up as allies and saying they want to learn, they want to help. Tell me what you're making what you make of this huge outcry of not only disappointment, anger, but also the overwhelming support towards the Black Lives Matter movement.
I feel like this should have happened a long time ago, and we had some people who were trying to peacefully protest by wearing T-shirts or kneeling, I feel like that didn't. It sparked some things, but just not enough. But this should have happened a long time ago. There's been way too many deaths since, like all these years. It should not be happening, and I feel like it's about time. And I think now that everyone was home, everyone is restless, everyone is tired, everyone is like struggling, everyone is kind of like on edge and at their wits' end. And then like this happened, and it was just like, we are done. And everyone was just like, no, like we are outraged, and we're going to and like have our voices heard. I think, how do you feel like if this pandemic wasn't happening? Do you think the movement would have like died down quickly? I think people are like too busy with their lives. Like, how do you feel? How do you feel about it? Because I feel like 2020 is like this year of like this big shift year, and I feel like because of the pandemic, because everyone's on edge, and because like of everything happening, everyone is like, they're taking to the streets, and because I feel like this should have happened a long time ago, but why didn't it happen a long time ago? Why is it this all of a sudden? Like, what is your take on that? Because I feel like it's because everyone saw the video, but we've seen like others being choked to death by cops, and we've seen all this. So why now?
Mhm.
Like, and I feel like it is part of the pandemic, part of like the restlessness, part of the we're tired of seeing this. Now is like the time to go, but maybe that's just the way I see things.
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a couple of different interpretations that you could have in
Hmm.
terms of why now, and
Yeah.
I would say I think it's a bit of what you mentioned. In
Hmm.
my interpretation, I mean, I by no means have like the answer, but if you're
Yeah.
asked to answer your question, I think it's kind
Yeah.
of the perfect storm of things. I think the
Yeah.
pandemic has something to do with it. I put probably a smaller percentage on that with
Yeah.
the fact that yes, people are home and people are restless.
Hmm.
And I say a smaller percentage on that because right after Trump took office, there were huge marches
Yeah.
across the world,
Hmm.
women's marches
Right.
that were taking place in support of women, which was
Hmm.
fantastic. It had nothing to do with the pandemic, but just people's
No.
level of
Yeah.
frustration. I
Yeah.
think that the level of frustration is gotten to the point where enough is enough.
Yeah.
I think the quote that's been attributed to Will Smith is so on point with
Yeah.
racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed.
Right.
I,
Absolutely.
I think that a lot of people, myself included, were able to
Hmm.
substitute themselves in, or a
Hmm.
family member, a loved one, or anybody
Yeah.
really in with George Floyd, because I
Yeah.
find that the brutality of seeing the video, and I know there's
Yeah.
some people who haven't been able to watch the whole thing,
Yeah.
but the brutality of seeing the video and thinking to themselves, okay, this is actually happening. Like
Yeah.
this isn't some sort of a movie. This isn't some sort of
Yeah.
a dream. This isn't some sort of doctored footage. This is happening. So
Yeah.
I think all of those
Yeah.
things, and plus the overwhelming frustration of the fact that
Yeah.
it has happened
Yeah.
again and again and
Everything.
again. I think all led to this.
Well, there was that man. Like, I mean, I can't remember if it was just photos or the footage of him being like chokehold
Mhm.
to death. I mean, there was that too, but there wasn't. Everyone was upset, but it wasn't to this degree. So, like, what is
Yeah.
it just too like? Because I always go back to Trayvon Martin. I feel like it should have just back then, or the little kid who was playing with the gun.
Yeah.
Like we should have been like marching and like outraged and outcry, because where's the de-escalation?
Mhm.
um, I think it's definitely about time that it's happened.
Mhm.
And the women's protest, like definitely, I think with having the president talking the way he does about women and having that person in power. I think that definitely, you know, we don't want someone in power like that.
Yeah. One of the things I'll share is, of course, when I started this series, the first video that I put out was basically talking about some of my experiences. And through that, I've had multiple people reach out. The support has been overwhelming and it's been wonderful, but it's been interesting that people have been reaching out in terms of either I never realized that not just yourself, but people went through things like that. But then it's also people been kind of identifying either situations that have happened in their home, situations that are currently happening in their home, situations that they might have been oblivious to, turning a blind eye to, what have you, that they're becoming more aware of. So one of the things that I've been saying is very similar to a couple of years ago where there was a huge population of people, specifically men, who were not aware of or could not really appreciate what was happening to women, not just in the workplace, but in multiple situations that developed the Time's Up and the Me Too movement. I think there's a lot of similar light bulb turning on moments, if you will, right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of people realizing that systematic racism is very much alive and well, not just in the United States.
I'm so surprised. Like, you're right. Like, I mean, some people are like, I guess, didn't realize, but I feel like I think people will mostly turn a blind eye, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely, and I felt it like as an Arab. I felt, I've seen it with others. So I feel like people are just, because they don't feel it, they just maybe don't need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me sad.
I think that there's also people who don't realize that they're saying or doing racist things. A perfect example was and that's not a scapegoat. That's just like some people just don't get it. A few weeks ago, I was at the grocery store and there was a gentleman who was kind of leery about using Apple Pay. He's like, I don't really want to tap. I'm concerned about security. And I said, no, it's very secure. And his comment to me was, well, I don't want somebody in China stealing my information. And I'm thinking to myself, why is the default to China? You could have like a teenager down the street stealing your information if you're really concerned about it, but the automatic default is to China. Similar to when Corona first came out, and it started becoming started becoming very, very topical earlier this year, before the lockdown, of course, and there were multiple people who would say, oh, you know what, it's a China problem. It's not our issue. So there's to me that also sparks to kind of a racist mentality. So
absolutely.
I want to talk about some of your experiences, but before we get to that, I want to get your perspective as a mother. Your husband, Jason, yourself. Like, is this something? These subjects? Is it something that you've spoken to your girls about, or are they too young? First of all, for those who don't know, and this is one of those situations where I'm going to ask you questions that I know the answer to for the benefit of people watching. How old are your girls?
So Inara will be 7 and Isla just turned 4.
Okay, so you have young girls. Is this something that you guys have spoken to them about? Have you had conversations with them about this? How do you handle that with
just recently?
Kids?
Just recently, because our family is very multicultural. Their cousins are Asian, Filipino, South Asian, Lebanese, Palestinian. Like, so we're a very multicultural family, and so we never actually talked about race for a long time, because for them this was just how it was, and they accepted people for who they were, because to them this is normal life, that everyone is who they are, whatever skin color, whatever, that's just who they are, makes them an individual. Like, so they never questioned why their cousin was brown, why their other cousins maybe looked a bit different. Like, they never questioned it, because this is this was their norm. And like an Isla, she tends to go for black baby dolls, brown dolls, and a lot of people are like, oh, babies or kids normally tend to navigate to dolls that look like them, but Isla navigates to black dolls. And I think she just, because her cousins all look different, and like for her, like, she just, whatever she likes. So because they're surrounded by multicultural people, like different races, from their family, from their friends, they don't think about it. But we had to have this conversation more with Inara than with Isla. And for Inara, like, we've been pushing since like the beginning, like since school kind of started a few years ago for her, like, that love is love, and just to mommy has friends who like boys are married to each other, or women are married to each other, and for you can love whoever you want to love as long as you are respected. And we kind of kept pushing that from the beginning, because like she was going to a Catholic school, and you knew sometimes that would counter what we were teaching her. So and it did, like some kid at school told her like, oh, my mom said that boys can't marry boys, and so she came home and said, well, this kid's mom said that boys can't marry boys. And I was like, well, no, like, yes, they can. And so we had that conversation for a long time. So like talking about race, like, so I started with that. I said, how we talk about love is love, and you can marry who you want as long as you're respected. I said, well, some people don't like people who, boys who marry boys, and girls who marry girls. They don't like them because they think it's wrong. I said, isn't that, like that's so sad, right? Because that doesn't matter. And she said, yeah, it doesn't matter. And then we talked about, I said, well, some people are like that with skin color, or I said, some people don't like mommy because she speaks Arabic, and it like blew her mind. Like, I'm like, it's down though, isn't it? And she said, yeah. And she's like, I want to learn Spanish and Japanese, and she wants to learn all these things. And I said, well, it takes different people to make a beautiful world. And I said, our neighbors are black, and our cousin Adira, she's brown. And I said, and isn't it stupid that someone would just not like them because their color of skin? And she's, yeah, it's ridiculous. I said, well, mommy's darker than daddy. Would it be a reason not to like me? She said, no. So she was so sad about it. I said, well, we have to, I said, there's people who are like that, who are very mean and who don't like people just because of the way they look or a language that they speak, and they're going to be mean about it. So we have to, stand up to them and help protect the people who need it. And so, like, I feel like that just burst her bubble of like her perfect little world of like, love everybody for who they are. If they're mean to you, then obviously don't like them. But but that had nothing to do with race or anything. And like and race didn't really, like, she didn't really have that, it's like a concept of it, but she just like, everyone is different and that's cool. And that was her world. And because she lives it every day. Yeah. So it was sad. Like I felt like it was hard. And then we did, we went to a little march in our neighborhood for the Black Lives Movement. Then we went all together as a family, just like we did the women's march. We talked about why we did women's march, but this is why we're doing this march. And we talked about that situation. Like we didn't talk about like the deaths, just just about how we have to be there to stand up for them and with them. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that conversation that you guys had with her. And as I'm listening to it, two things popped into my head. First of all, there was a beautiful picture during I think during this whole situation where there was just so much back and forth in terms of, there were some people who were posting about the support of the Black Lives Matter movement, but there are also people who are saying, once you start looting, you lose your argument, and all lives matter, and kind of like that piece. You posted a beautiful picture of your daughter Isla with one of her friends, and they were just hugging, and it was so beautiful. And if you're okay with it, I'll post it in this.
She was kissing.
Yeah,
she was kissing him.
and I remember they were together. I don't remember the actual kissing, but it was wonderful. And one of the things
she's kissing on the cheek.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate, like as I'm listening to you talk, and I find myself getting a little emotional, is because that conversation that you guys had with your daughter is life-changing. And when I say that, it's because I strongly believe, in my non-PhD mind, I strongly believe that racism comes from two places. One is the home, and the other is our educational system. Our
100%.
educational system, meaning not saying teachers are racist, but saying that if you were only taught something from the white point of view, and you're not being taught about the importance and the impact that other cultures had on the development of civilization, they're at a loss in their education. But in the home, in terms of when I look at that picture, it symbolizes to me like love and hope, because little kids don't care. They don't. You see little kids of all ethnicities hanging out and playing with each other, and then you have this wonderful conversation where you're talking about love. And the unfortunate thing is that there are a lot of families that are having a different conversation in terms of like hate, and in terms of not being as acceptance of people of different colors, of different sexual orientations, or what have you. So I'm so pleased and thankful
Yeah.
that you guys are helping repopulate the world with wonderful people. So thank you for that. I want to talk about your experiences, and I guess I'll start off in terms of, you are a filmmaker. You are an actor. You're a writer. You're a director. You kind of cover all the different, cover it from multiple angles, and you're very successful. You've had multiple award-winning projects. People, like, tons of people want to work with you. You're very successful, 100%. But I want you to, again, question I know the answer to, but I'd like you to share. Last year, you created this wonderful project, a web series called Dirty Love. I want you to talk about what was your motivation behind doing your own project, and like, what was your motivation behind doing your own project, and what was your some of your experiences in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, as an Arab, a lot of the characters that are, that were developed a lot were just, wife of a terrorist, sister of a terrorist, like covered, Muslim, like oppressed woman, kind of, like, and it's like, these are not the roles I want to be portraying. And you'll see a lot of like Arab actors say, like, I started just turning down these roles because that's all that's all there was, all these terrorist roles, and they're trying to stereotype Arabs, and they're making us look really bad. And that's, how, like Trevor Noah had said, like, a lot of people who will watch these, the media and the news and their films and like the Midwest America, like they take that information to, like, they don't know anything else. So they're going to see our, like, Arab stereotyped into terrorist roles. They're going to be very, racist against terrorists because they think that this is, our whole population are terrorists, and that's just not true. It's not well represented at all. It's like white people have the KKK. Arabs unfortunately have like ISIS and Al Qaeda, but every culture has their terrorist group. And it's a very small percentage of the population, like a very tiny percentage, and you can't paint us with the same brush because that's not real life. And so I feel like that, because the gatekeeper in Hollywood, they're all, they're white men, they're, and they need a bad guy, so we're the new bad guys. And even Rami Malek was said, like, if it wasn't for the producer on Mr. Robot, Sam Ismail, he wouldn't have had the chance to land that role, if it wasn't for an Arab producer. So I was just kind of done with, I was like, how am I don't want to, first of all, do these roles, and I'm auditioning for them because I need to be seen. But here I am feeling guilty because I'm misrepresenting my culture. And also that's why I kind of started writing. I was like, I want to write something that I can relate to. And, not all Arabs are the same. Not all Muslims are the same. Not all Muslim women are like hijabis. And, my family is very open and progressive. And I wanted to write about something I relate to. So we wrote about, an Arab Muslim woman who sells sex toys. And, there's still like people who, I've had like an Arab man like comment saying, well, you made, Islam look bad because she was dating a man. I'm like, well, like, not all Muslims are the same, and people practice in different ways. And like, my relationship with God is, none of your business. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really wanted to show the world that, like, there are different types of Arabs, and I want to show the I also want to show my family dynamic, which is just a real life family dynamic, I guess a bit more, I say, like, spicier than a white family, I guess, with my dad yelling.
Yeah.
But like with my dad, it's, family is everything, and pride is everything. Family pride and honor, like, that's a big thing in the Arab culture, and I want to show that. And I want to kind of break that stereotype, and that's why I wrote it. And and even in like the first episode, we see like a racist colleague, and like that was based on real events that happened with a couple of different people. So even one being like an actor here in Ottawa who made a really negative comment about Muslims, who I thought was a friend. And he felt that he was okay to just publicly shame Muslims on Facebook, and thought that was fine. And then the experience when I was in Cancun, and I was talking to a girl in New York, and this guy from Alberta, like, he was talking about Arabs. I said, well, I'm an Arab. And he like grabbed her chair and he slid her away from me. He's like, don't get on a plane with her. She's going to blow you up and things like that. You know, and I've been called a terrorist princess, you know, being stopped at the border, you know, asking, you know, where we're from, even though we're Canadian, born here in Canada. Oh, well, where are your parents from? Why does it matter where my parents from? I'm born in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen. You didn't, you know, like, there's no reason to ask where my parents, my parents are not even in the car. Why do you need to know? So like, it's, you know, and then hearing with like the Muslim ban and like the States, and like people can't fly anymore. Like, it's so crazy. Like, there's no reason for things like that. And so I really want to break those stereotypes in my work. And even though Inara, like my short film Inara, is not technically an Arab film, Inara is an Arab name, and I wanted to show what that, like, you know, we use that name to represent the film. So it's just, I really want to break those stereotypes and break and start showcasing Arabs in a different light. Maybe we'll have a better representation of the culture. But we have very little, I think, I mean, the percentage of even like Arab actors that are hired is very, very tiny.
It's interesting because that's one of the things we've talked about multiple times. I mean, of course, everybody likes going to the theaters and being able to see a representation of them on screen, which is why you see films like Crazy Rich Asians, Black Panther, things, movies of that nature do really well. But it's interesting because you'd be hard pressed to name, you know, a plethora of actors that represent your community. You just would. And I remember you were pitching something to a group of producers, and they asked you like, well, who would you cast?
Who's your dream cast?
Who's your dream cast? And tell the people how about that scenario.
They're like, I mean, they're like, who would you be your like Hollywood dream cast in this? I'm like, can you name me more than 5 Arab actors and name me one that's a woman? And they're like, I'm like, oh, what, Rami Malek? Okay, cool. What else? You know, Amina Massoud? Tony Shalhoub? Cool. What about women? Come on, guys, you know. And it was like, this is why I write, because like I have no one that I can like look on screen and be like, hey, that's, you know, that's me. And like, and there are lots of Arabs, you know, there's like in Egypt is like Arabs Hollywood for sure, you know, and Nadine Labaki, she's an actress and a director and she's phenomenal and I love her. But like in Hollywood, like there's no like, you know, Arab American or Canadian, you know, Canadian Arab actors that are big, because like there are no roles for them. Even Jasmine was not Arab, you know. So so there's a problem, and like, you know, we're very misrepresented in Hollywood, and it's very sad because, you know, we are, I mean, I like all cultures, like we have our good sides and our bad sides, but we are a great, you know, culture, and it's just sad that we're very misrepresented in the Hollywood community.
Yeah, and it's one of those unfortunate things too, because there was a guy years ago, I forget his name, but he was in a Las Vegas hotel. He had, you know, semi-automatic rifles shooting up the place. White guy. He was like misunderstood, or he had mental problems or something. You know, an Arab does that, they're a terrorist. So there's that built-in mentality and dialogue around things of that nature.
Yeah, well, look at the kid in like Toronto in the streetcar. He was Syrian, who was like suicidal, and he didn't hurt anybody. He got everybody off the streetcar. He had a little knife in his hand. He didn't do anything to anybody. He got everybody off. He wanted to talk to his dad, and they killed him. They didn't de-escalate it. They didn't try. But the guy who shot up the church, the white guy who shot up the black church, they walked him out.
Yeah, I remember
they walked
that
him out.
very well.
They walked him out.
Yeah.
They walked him out. Like, and this kid who's like, I think 17 years old, suicidal. He wants his dad. He was in distress. In distress. They shot him. Like, where's the de-escalation? So for white, like, and it's unfortunate, but for a lot, I'm not saying for all, but for a lot of white terrorists, they will not shoot first. But for anybody else, they will, you know. Yeah. So it's really sad.
I want to just jump back to the acting piece really quickly, just to get your opinion on something. As we are seeing multiple companies embrace diversity, embrace the Black Lives Matter movement, and hoping that this isn't just a temporary fad, that this is actually going to be a seismic shift change. Do you think that will in and itself help create opportunities from you from an acting standpoint or with different projects that you're working on?
I mean, like what I've been seeing, no, not for Arabs. They're like really focused on like getting any Black representation.
Okay.
So they're not really looking diversity. They're looking for Black representation. Like they're like, oh,
Okay.
I'm looking for like Black. You know, they really want to get in on that, and like, which is great. Like we want obviously everyone to have their opportunity, for sure. So I don't know when we will get our time to shine.
Yeah.
But they're I mean, they say they're looking for diversity. I'm hoping it will get there,
Yeah.
so I just look, we need to change the gatekeeper. That's what we need to change. We need more diversity in big Hollywood seats, like
Yeah.
Mindy Kaling and what she's doing for her community.
Mhm. Because one of the things that I think of, and I appreciate that George Floyd has been a vessel of sorts that's helped
Yeah.
open up communication around the world. And sometimes it
Yeah.
could be an uncomfortable communication with people, but it's a communication that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But for myself, I look at racism isn't just against
No.
Black people. We've talked about how it is against the Arab community. I've
Yeah.
spoken to people in the indigenous community. I've
Yeah.
spoken to people in the Asian community, and it's just unfortunate that this is still a matter of
Well,
conversation in
look what's
2020.
look what's happening in Palestine.
Hmm.
And no one talks about what's happening in Palestine. And Palestine's a huge thing,
Hmm.
There's a lot of racism there, and between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and it's really sad. And no one talks about that. And but yeah, it's I mean, racism on a whole level, it's a bigger issue globally,
Yeah.
between different cultures for sure. But here in I mean, in general, everywhere with the Black community, it's devastating, especially with the slavery, everything that's had happened 400 years, and you still kind of can't get out from under that,
Hmm.
And the lack of empathy is shocking to me for a lot of people. So I just the lack of empathy is just mind-boggling.
Hmm. No,
It makes me really
absolutely.
sad
Yeah,
that people don't see that.
yeah, and I think there's a difference between I touched on earlier, kind of like the ignorance of not seeing it because it's
Yeah,
not happening to you, but there's no excuse for the lack of empathy.
yeah.
That's because once you're made aware of it, you know,
Hmm.
to me this isn't a time to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah,
It's a time to get involved. And to that end, for the people who are putting their hand up and saying that they're an ally,
yeah.
this is the new thing, they're an ally, which is wonderful.
Hmm.
What do you say to people who would say, I want to help but I don't know how?
It's yeah. I feel like for that, like there's places you can donate. Keep posting, reaching out to your city councilors, the MPs, all them, and write to them. My friend's a family lawyer. We were talking about something like completely like off topic about something else, and we were like, wow, that's so ridiculous that can happen. And she said, well, because you need to write to your MP, and no one writes, but people forget about these things, and then they can move forward. And I think it was something like oh, I can't even. I don't want to get into it because it's her business. But like, it was something super shocking to me,
Okay.
and she was saying that like it's because you need to write to your MP, for these changes to happen. And so I think like if we make a big, and we flood them with emails, we write to them saying like make these changes, and I think that's what you can do to help and be an ally. Keep educating people, find the right sources, just and make sure that you're doing your research
Hmm.
so that you can educate other people and you know what you're talking about.
I agree. I also
Hmm.
think if I was to add on to that,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would say that we need to put out the little fires. And what I
Yeah,
mean by that is if we've identified that part of the issue is in the home, if you're at
yeah,
one of those family dinners and this conversation comes up and that's a fire that's starting, you need to put it out. And
yeah,
I applaud those people who are having those uncomfortable conversations with family members who are saying things that they know isn't right, that they
yeah.
need to disagree with.
Oh,
and
100%. Yeah.
having those conversations. I think there's all aspects of
Yeah.
life that this touches, whether it be in the whether it be in the
Hmm.
home, whether it be
Yeah.
in the workplace, whether it be in the boardrooms, decisions that are
Yeah.
being made in all sorts of different circumstances. Um,
Hmm. Well,
it's
as parents,
interesting.
for sure. Parents, educate your children, and like it starts with you, and how you treat people is how they're going to treat people.
Yeah.
You know.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Um, we could keep talking about this, but I want to be conscious of your time, and I want to thank you.
Yeah.
No, and I do. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your
Mhm.
schedule to
Mhm.
to chat with me tonight. I think these conversations
Yeah.
are very important, and I'm starting this dialogue, and I
Yeah.
know these are dialogues that are happening, and I think it's very important for people to check this out and to hear different perspectives.
Yeah.
So, and
Well, I'm so happy that like you shared, your first episode, you shared your stories and your experiences, because like
yeah,
you said, like some people don't realize, but like, I hear your stories. I've heard them, with other people, and like I've had experiences, and like it just boggles my mind that like these people, and even in high school, I was talking to Jace about it. I was like, well, this person called this guy the N-word in high school for like nothing. Like they were fighting. Like, why would you even like do that? Why?
yeah,
Like we had this conversation, and like how they got to this big fight, like fist fight, and these things happen. I was like, why would you go to like that in your vocabulary
hmm
now? Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? I mean, we were like, this is like, or what, 1999, 2000? Like, but, even I knew like in my vocabulary that like, that's not a good word. And this is why. And like, so having that in your back pocket to use against someone because you're mad at them, you want to start a fight, like, not cool,
yeah.
you
I,
know?
Yeah, I've always said if you want to make fun of me, there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways a lot of different roads you can go
Hmm.
down. You could point out the slightly overweight. You could point out the stutter. You could point out the
Hmm.
un, uncanny
Stutter? What
shiny.
stutter?
You,
You're
the,
like the most well-spoken person I've ever met in my
you're very
life.
sweet, but there is a stutter. You can point out the uncanny
Yeah.
shiny head. I've always never understood why that becomes somebody's default. But the reality is that if you're you know coming in contact with a person of color, regardless of what ethnicity they are,
Hmm.
99.999% chance they've experienced some level of racism in their life, and that's unfortunate. And when I
Yeah.
think of your two wonderful daughters, I'm hoping that we clean this world up so they don't have to go
I'm
through it as
trying,
well.
man. Like we're trying with our kids, but like even with this love is love, like we had a hard time, like right away. Some kid at school said his mom, and I'm like, but like we're in like 2020. Like how is this
Yeah,
conversation still a thing? Like just that, yeah, that's my mind. But it just this, and I know we have to go, but like even people in different communities like South Asian communities, they're saying like they sell skin lightening cream.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that's I was talking to a photographer like a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, you look so tan. And he'd just come back from Thailand. He's like, oh no, like because he was a model, he's like, I can't be dark. Like he's like, I have like they sell like white skin, because dark is bad, you have to be white like there. But why? Like what's the problem? Well, that's what they like. And I like some history way back when about like because we're talking about like hijabs with somebody, and they're saying, well, even started before Muslims, a lot of people used to cover their faces. They didn't want to be in the sun, because if you were tan, that meant you were poor, working in the on the farm, and you didn't want to look poor, so you didn't want to be tanned, so
mhm.
you covered your face. So that was something else, like something different. But it just the whole, it's like we're 2020, like come on. Like
Yeah.
it's let's move forward, and let's grow up, and love everybody for who they are, and their beautiful skin colors.
We need our advancement as a people to catch up to our advancements in
Yeah.
technologies. you know?
Right, like but it just boggles my mind. And like even like my grandparents, I look at my grandfather on my mom's side, so like the Lebanese are darker than the Syrians are a lot whiter, because I think Alexander the Great had come in and like conquered, so like blonde hair, blue eyed. But Lebanese, like they're so much darker. And like my grandfather, God rest his soul, like he was so tan and dark compared to like my grandmother, who was like super light. And like I love that, like he was He was this like brown man. He was so beautiful. And you know, Mona gets, you know, that beautiful golden color in the summer. I'm like, so jealous. You know, I was like, people are wanting to be whiter. I'm like, give me more tan. Give me more
Yeah.
tan. I want to look like this golden goddess. Come on. You know, like, but here, like you know, they want to be whiter. And I'm like, no, give me that beautiful suntan. Like,
Golden
it's
Goddess,
like,
I think you're already there. You're fine.
oh,
Yeah.
but you know, I think this whole thing about skin color is just absolutely ridiculous. And I think you're a beautiful man. And I think it's ridiculous that other people wouldn't see that.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for taking the time to chat with me tonight. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you sharing your stories and some of your experiences. And it really means a lot. And again, I think, like I said, these conversations matter. And I think it's important for us
it's
to
very
talk
important.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be like embarrassed to be Arab. You know, seriously, I used to be so embarrassed. But now, like, you know, it's my culture, who I am. I embrace it and stuff. But that's like because of that, you know. And my dad told me when 9/11 happened, he's like, your life will never be the same. He was right. So, you know, it's like it's over. And not say it's over for you, but he's like, it's never going to be the same.
So I have to ask now. So, in regards to that, was the embarrassment of being Arab around 9/11, or was it just around some of the other things that were happening younger in life?
Well, even before September 11th happened, like we were always like, you know, with white community, like, oh, go back to where you come from. We don't want your language here. Go back to where you came from. You're dirty. You're this. You're, you know, things like that all the time. So, so it was embarrassing, you know. Yeah. So I wanted to fit in. So
it's interesting because I've spoken with one of my good friends who's in the Indigenous community, and there is a meme that I post every year around Easter, and it's YOLO, and it's like Easter, the day Jesus slapped YOLO in the face,
right.
and I bring that up because anytime I hear that racist comment of go back to where you're from, I always default to our wonderful people in the Indigenous community, because to me, with all due respect, even though you and I were both born here, they're really the ones who have any sort of stake in dropping that line, and they never do. And it always boggles my mind that it's people that, like, you and I, that are born here, but their parts came from somewhere else, usually in Europe, and they come with the whole go back to where you're from.
Yeah.
You go back to where you're from. Like, it's ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's this stupid mentality that kind of defaults, as you were saying a moment ago, where the default was, you know, calling somebody the N-word in high school or something.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it.
No. And it's so funny. So that they Americanized Jesus. Like, he would be part of that, like, you know, probably that Muslim band, the Arabics. He looks, you know, he's from the Middle East. I mean, not Muslim. He was Catholic, but like he was an Arab. You know, he's one of us. You know, from Syria. You know, so like he's not American. He's not blonde hair. But my brother looks like Jesus more than like what Jesus looks like. So
yeah. It's true.
You know, it was like but they Americanized this man, and he's not.
Yeah.
And that's what boggles my mind too, is like, you are so against Arabs and Middle Eastern, but this is where Jesus comes from, and you like praise him, and this is where, but that is like, you know, that's the Holy Land, that's the motherland, that's where he comes from, you know, but we're the people you hate, but that's where he's from.
Yeah. No,
you know, it just boggles my mind. Like, don't Americanize Jesus. Sorry, but he's not American.
No, it's very true. Very true. I got to tell you something. So you're very close to me. You're like family to me. And you tonight have been baptized into the Trinidadian community. And what I mean by that is I remember when my brother and I, we would go to family get-togethers. And I say my brother and I because at one point the parents come and they said, okay, it's time to go. And then we all get our coats on and we stand by the door. We stand by the door for like half an hour while the parents keep talking. We've done like multiple goodbyes here and we're still talking.
But
so
this is what happens at my house anyways, right?
Congratulations on becoming Trinidadian tonight.
you know what's funny? Like I feel like all of our cultures are very similar in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like this is how we pitch. I mean, when I pitched the series, like at the film festival, how I was like, well, you know what, my household at Christmas, it's like this.
Yeah.
And at JC's, it's like this. And I feel like anybody who, like, you know, the producer who's Egyptian, the one who's Italian, like they really relate to it. And I feel like everyone can relate to like the loud household, like who's immigrant, but then like the white people are very like, I don't know, they're, you know, like JC Australia, they're great. They're like, oh, good job, you know, it's great. Oh, Merry Christmas, mimosas. And here it's quiet. And like us,
Yeah.
it's plates flying and people screaming and this and that, someone crying, like crazy amounts of food everywhere. And like, yeah, and it's, and like such big families and big everything. Everything is loud and big. And I feel like everybody, most immigrants can relate to that.
100%. Absolutely. Well, I very much enjoyed our Trinidadian conversation tonight. But no, it was great. And I mean, I wasn't gonna leave after you mentioned that. So thank you so much. Usually this is where I say I'll talk to you soon, but I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it. Again, I'm very appreciative of our friendship and that we can have these types of conversations. So thanks for allowing me to film it tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Maissa Houri, and I'm going to drop a link to her web series in this as well, so you can go and check that out as well and show her some love. Thank you guys so much. These conversations will continue, and until next time, take care.